There are children who, just as they are learning to speak, utter chilling words. I have died already. That person killed me. I remember. There was so much blood. They don't just mumble random fragments, they recount vivid memories, detailing fatal wounds, identifying murderers, and describing the final moments of a life that isn't their own. These strange stories, though often met with skepticism by science, continue to surface across the world, forcing even the most rational minds to ask, could death truly not be the end? Could memories survive the boundary of life and death, clinging to a fragile soul, seeking justice from a former life? If you, too, believe that our world hides mysteries beyond explanation, don't forget to subscribe to World Mysteries, where we dive deep into the most chilling journeys and the most extraordinary stories every week. Now, steady your heart, because what you're about to hear are not just stories. They are whispers from the other side, refusing to be silenced. 5 children, 5 deaths, 5 terrifying reincarnation journeys. The story begins. Part 1, the Syrian boy who exposed his killer. It began in the windswept highlands of the Golan Heights, a rugged land straddling the uneasy borders of Syria and Israel. There, among the Druze people, a community that has long believed in the mysteries of reincarnation, a 3-year-old boy made a claim that would freeze the blood of every adult who heard it. I was killed with an axe, he said, his tiny finger trembling as he pointed to a deep birthmark on his forehead, and the man who did it lives nearby. The villagers listened, stunned. Among the Druze, when a child speaks vividly of a past life, elders take it seriously. They believe that a soul who died violently often returns, carrying scars, memories, and unfinished justice. The boy insisted he remembered his former home. He described it, the cracked walls, the broken fence, the olive trees leaning against the dry wind. Driven by curiosity and a growing sense of dread, the villagers decided to follow him. Step by step, the child led them across rocky fields and winding paths until he stopped at a house. He looked up, his young face tightening with an emotion far too heavy for someone so small. "This is where I lived," he said. At that moment, a man stepped out onto the porch, a neighbor known to the villagers. Without hesitation, the boy pointed straight at him. "That's the man who killed me." The accusation hung in the air like a thunderclap. The man stammered, denied, laughed nervously. But in the presence of the boy's steady, unwavering stare, in the eerie silence of the assembled crowd, his face turned pale. Then the boy said something even more chilling. "I can show you where he buried me." No one dared speak. They simply followed. The boy led them to a barren patch of earth behind the fields, a place that seemed ordinary, unremarkable. "Dig here," he said. With trembling hands, the villagers began to dig. After a few moments, the ground gave way, and what they uncovered stole the breath from every chest: a skeleton. The skull bore a deep, horrific crack, precisely where the boy's birthmark was located. And next to the bones lay a rusted axe, its blade still caked with ancient, blackened blood. The man collapsed to his knees, sobbing. He confessed everything: the quarrel, the sudden rage, the murder he thought had been buried forever under the dust and silence of the highlands. But the past had not stayed buried. It had returned, in the voice, in the memory, in the very body of a 3-year-old boy. The story of the Druze child, nameless to protect his privacy, would soon spread beyond the hills of Golan. It would find its way into books about reincarnation, like Trutz Hardou's Children Who Have Lived Before, as one of the most chilling and compelling cases ever recorded. One life ended by violence, another life born with the wound. Justice, demanded by a soul too young to understand, yet too old to forget. And this was only the beginning. Across the oceans, in the heartland of America, another child was waking up night after night, gripped by memories of betrayal, blood, and a knife in the dark. Part 2. Cameron in Oklahoma, murdered by a stepmother's hand. From the harsh land of Golan, our story carries us across the ocean to the quiet towns of Oklahoma, USA. But even amid the seemingly unshakable peace, memories of death were stirring, awakening night after night in the cries of a little boy. 5-year-old Noah would wake up screaming, night after night, each time clutching his stomach, sobbing, whispering words that froze his parents' blood. "My stepmother stabbed me. It hurts, so cold." At first, they thought it was just nightmares. But as days passed, Noah's memories grew sharper. He called himself Cameron and spoke of living in a white house with his father and a cruel stepmother. He remembered the flash of a kitchen knife, the cold seeping from his belly, and the icy, merciless gaze of the woman who ended his life. The bizarre coincidences piled up until Noah's parents decided to investigate. They dug through old news archives, and what they found left them trembling. Over a decade ago, a boy named Cameron Williams had gone missing from their very town. The police report noted Cameron lived with his biological father and stepmother. One day, the boy vanished without a trace. The stepmother had claimed Cameron went out to play and never came back. But with no witnesses, no body, no solid evidence, the case had gone cold, and the town moved on, leaving only a lingering, gnawing doubt in those who remembered. And now, Noah was recounting specific details: the White House, the old tree by the road, the rusty well behind the house. Every single description matched Cameron's last known home. Desperate for clarity, Noah's parents conducted one last test. They printed out an old family photo of Cameron. Without hesitation, Noah pointed at the woman in the photo, Cameron's stepmother, and screamed, "That's her! She stabbed me!" There could be no more doubt. Noah's family contacted the authorities and told them everything. Skeptical at first, the investigators listened, but as Noah revealed more details, too precise and intimate to be mere chance, they decided to reopen the case. A search team was dispatched to the abandoned house. Noah, guided by a force beyond logic, led them to the old, dried-up well. "I'm down there," he said, tears streaming down his face. They dug carefully through layers of damp earth. And then, chillingly, they found them: a tattered piece of a child's shirt, a small, decaying shoe, and finally, tiny, broken bones emerging from the mud. DNA analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Cameron Williams. The past had clawed its way back to the surface. The stepmother, who once smiled sweetly at cameras and denied any wrongdoing, was arrested, finally facing the justice she had evaded for so long. In court, Noah, the boy who carried Cameron's memory, stayed close to his parents, his eyes wide with fear, but burning with something deeper: recognition. When Noah's gaze met the stepmother's, it seemed as if time itself paused. Everyone in that room felt it. The truth cannot be buried. No matter how deep it is hidden, it will find its voice. And once again, the whispers from beyond the veil of death had crossed into the world of the living, demanding justice. But this was still not the end. Half a world away, in the sun-baked villages of India, another child was stirring. And in his tiny heart burned memories of murder, betrayal, and the heavy, deadly fall of a hammer. Part 3. Shankar in India, remembering each blow of the hammer. Far from the bustling cities of America, in a remote and dusty village of northern India, another chilling story was beginning to unfold. A 5-year-old boy named Shankar left everyone in his village stunned, with tales from a life that wasn't his own. Even as a toddler, Shankar would sit quietly under the ancient banyan tree at the village's edge, his gaze distant, his small voice murmuring strange words. "I was killed over land. Kishore, he hit me with a hammer. They buried me in the sugarcane fields." At first, Shankar's parents thought it was nothing more than a child's imagination, but as he grew, the details became too specific, too persistent to ignore. One day, Shankar grabbed his mother's hand tightly, tears in his eyes, and whispered, "Mother, I'm not Shankar. I'm Ram. I was killed in the next village." Terrified yet compelled to know the truth, the family decided to take Shankar to the village he kept mentioning, just a few kilometers away. The moment they arrived, Shankar's entire demeanor changed. Gone was the shy little boy. With confident steps, he led them through winding, dusty paths until they stood before a dilapidated house. "This was my house," he declared. Just then, a middle-aged woman stepped out. Shankar stared at her for a moment, then choked out, "This is my wife." The woman, the widow of a man named Ram, who had mysteriously vanished 2 years earlier, froze in her tracks. When Shankar called her by her private nickname and recounted memories only she and her husband would know, she collapsed into sobs. In her heart, she knew, somehow, impossibly, her husband had returned in the body of a child. When asked what had happened, Shankar spoke without hesitation. "Kishore, the neighbor, ambushed me after an argument over our farmland. He struck me from behind with a hammer." The widow nodded through her tears. Ram had indeed disappeared following a heated land dispute with Kishore. Back then, everyone had assumed it was a tragic accident. But now, Shankar revealed the horrifying truth. It was murder. The villagers, once skeptical, now demanded answers. They decided to dig in the sugarcane fields where Shankar pointed. Beneath the hard earth, they unearthed skeletal remains, and among them a silver ring engraved with the name Ram, proof beyond any doubt. The suspect, Kishore, was summoned. Facing the crowd and the unwavering stare of Shankar, he trembled. Still, he tried to deny it. But Shankar, with a voice that seemed far older than his years, pointed straight at him. "You killed me. I remember everything." Cornered by undeniable evidence and the wrath of the villagers, Kishore finally confessed. A petty feud over land had driven him to murder, believing he could bury the crime and the memory forever. But he hadn't counted on the soul of his victim returning, inhabiting a child's body, demanding justice. After the truth came to light, Shankar gradually stopped speaking of his past life. He returned to his childhood, embraced by his family, free at last to live the second chance fate had granted him. But the villagers would never forget. They would pass down the story from generation to generation, whispering, "Even the dead can speak," through the voice of a child. Once again, a memory from beyond death had torn through the fabric of the living world to set things right. What do you think about the story you've just heard? Could memory really transcend death and return through the voice of a child? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your perspective before we continue on this chilling journey. But the journey was not yet over. Across the ocean, in the quiet heart of America, another little boy was beginning to remember a gunshot, a battlefield, and a life that ended too soon. Part 4. Sam Taylor, Remembering the Gunshot and the Return of a Grandfather. In a quiet American town where maple trees blazed red each autumn, the Taylor family welcomed a new member, baby Sam. At first, he seemed like any other healthy, lively child. But when Sam turned just 18 months old, he began to say things that left his family frozen in place. One afternoon, as his father, John Taylor, was changing his diaper, Sam looked straight into his eyes and said, "When you were little, I changed your diapers." John was stunned. How could a child not yet 2 years old utter such a thing? But that was only the beginning. In the months that followed, Sam spoke often of memories that made no sense. A blue house on Lakeview Street, where a worn-out blender made daily milkshakes, afternoons spent fishing by the lakeside, and terrifying nightmares, where Sam would scream in the middle of the night, "Get down! Fire! Fire!" Sam's parents, practical people by nature, initially dismissed it as childish fantasy. But then the coincidences piled up. Every detail Sam described, the house, the food, the songs he hummed, matched the life of John Sr., Sam's late grandfather, who had passed away 2 years earlier. John Sr. had served in the military during the Korean War. In a brutal battle, he was shot through the left side of his chest, but survived. What chilled the family even more was that Sam had a faint red birthmark on the left side of his chest, exactly where John Sr. had been wounded. No one had ever told Sam about the war wounds. They were memories locked away with sorrow and silence. Yet somehow Sam remembered. One day, when shown a vintage photograph of a school class from decades ago, Sam pointed instantly at a boy. "That's me," he declared. No hesitation, no guidance. The Taylor family realized the impossible. Sam was somehow their grandfather returned. Later, Dr. Jim Tucker, a renowned researcher at the University of Virginia specializing in past life memories in children, formally documented Sam's case. He verified that Sam accurately matched over 50 specific details about his grandfather's life, details the boy could not have learned naturally. When asked about his nightmares, Sam simply said, "I remember the gunfire. It was so loud, then the blood, and then everything went dark." Sam had never been exposed to movies about war or violence. Where else could these memories have come from, if not from deep within his soul? As he grew older, the memories faded, like mist dissolving in the morning sun. Sam embraced his childhood fully, living a new life in the warmth of his loving family. Yet the Taylors knew they had witnessed something miraculous, a rebirth, a soul's return. Every so often, when they looked into Sam's wise, steady eyes, they would whisper to each other, "He's still here, in the body of the child we love." And once again, death had not been an ending. It had merely been a door, one that opened into another chapter, Another life, tethered by bonds that even time and mortality could not break. But our chilling journey isn't over yet. In central Vietnam, along a cold, flowing river, a little girl was beginning to remember her own tragic death, and her story was about to be told. Part 5, Little Tuyền in Vietnam, a memory of injustice beneath the river. In a quiet rural village in central Vietnam, where green rice fields stretch endlessly alongside winding rivers, a small girl named Mai began to utter strange, haunting words. Words that would shake both her family and the entire community. From the time she was just 4 years old, Mai was plagued by relentless nightmares. Night after night, she would wake up crying, thrashing in her sleep, gasping broken phrases. "Don't push me. I can't breathe. The water is so cold, it's so dark." At first, her parents, Mr. Hung and Mrs. Hoa, thought she was merely suffering from bad dreams. But one stormy night, as rain battered the roof, Mai clung tightly to her mother, sobbing. "I am Tuyền. Mama Hoa, Aunt Lan pushed me into the river." The name Tuyền pierced the family's heart like a dagger. Tuyền, a little girl who had gone missing in the neighboring village more than 5 years ago. Back then, it was believed that Tuyền had accidentally slipped and fallen into the river while playing alone. The villagers searched for days, but her body was never found. The sorrow faded with time, but the pain remained buried deep in the hearts of those who remembered. Now another child, Mai, was claiming to be Tuyền and accusing her own aunt, Mrs. Lan, of murder. Shocked yet desperate for answers, Hung and Hoa decided to bring Mai to meet Tuen's birth parents, Mr. and Mrs. Tom. The moment they stepped into the yard, Mai broke down in tears, running into Mrs. Tom's arms, crying, "Mama, I missed you so much." The house fell into stunned silence. When questioned, Mai recounted private memories, the tabby cat Tuyền once cared for, the scar on her leg from a fall off a bamboo bridge, the pink dress with a little bear, a birthday gift from when she turned 7. Details so intimate, details only the family could have known. Mr. and Mrs. Tom, faces pale and trembling, realized the impossible truth. Their daughter had somehow returned within the body of another. Once calm, they gently asked Mai about the day of Tuyen's disappearance. Through shivers and tears, Mai recounted, "I was playing by the river. Aunt Lan came. She was very angry. She scolded me, then pushed me hard into the water. I screamed, but she just walked away. It was so cold, so dark." There was no more room for doubt. An ugly truth, long buried, was clawing its way back into the light. Mr. and Mrs. Tom immediately reported the revelations to the authorities. Under the weight of new suspicions, an official investigation was reopened. The villagers, once reluctant, returned to search the muddy banks of the river where Mai had pointed, and there, tangled in the riverbed weeds, they found skeletal remains. Alongside them, a small butterfly-shaped hair clip that Tuyền had worn on the day she vanished. DNA tests confirmed the remains belonged to little Tuyền. Combined with the inconsistencies in Aunt Lan's old testimony, the evidence was overwhelming. A warrant was issued. On the day of her arrest, Aunt Lan, the woman who had coldly pushed her niece to her death, lowered her head, unable to meet Mai's steady, fearless gaze. As she passed, Mai whispered, trembling yet firm, "You did wrong. And I remember." Thus, the memory of a small, drowned soul, thought lost forever in the cold currents of the river, had returned, demanding justice. After the case was closed, Mai no longer suffered nightmares. She began smiling again, as if Twen's spirit had finally found peace. The two families, bound together by fate and tragedy, came to love and raise Mai as one of their own. They saw her not only as a precious child, but also as a miraculous gift, a second chance from destiny. 5 children, 5 memories of death, 5 voices from beyond, breaking through the boundaries between life and death, returning to demand justice. From the Syrian boy who exposed his murderer with a piercing stare, to Noah carrying Cameron's memories, leading investigators to the well where his body lay hidden, to Shankar in India, reborn to reveal his killer in the sun-scorched fields. Sam Taylor, the child who bore the heart and memories of a lost grandfather. And finally, little Mai, who recounted her tragic fate in the cold waters of central Vietnam. Each story, though separated by distance, culture, and language, shares a single truth. Memory does not die. Truth cannot be buried. No matter how cautiously modern science approaches the concept of reincarnation, no matter how loud the voices of doubt and skepticism, the clear, innocent eyes of these children, the chilling details they reveal, persist, standing quietly as a challenge to human understanding. Perhaps death is not an end, but merely a door, waiting for someone to cross back through and speak the words left unsaid. Perhaps deep within every soul, invisible threads remain, ties of love, unfinished promises, injustices waiting to be righted. What do you think? Are we truly bound to a single lifetime? Or does every death mark a beginning, a continuation of unfinished journeys, reaching across the veil of mortality? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to World Mysteries to join us on our continuing exploration into the most chilling enigmas, the most extraordinary tales, where life, death, and memory are separated by nothing more than a fragile breath. World Mysteries, where the whispers from beyond never fade.